UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed recognized the importance of faith-based organizations in working towards meeting the Sustainable Development Goals when she said, "The continued support and activism of faith-based organizations will be essential as we forge ahead in our quest to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals for all people." We know that faith-based organizations are actively working across the world in many, many areas, including agriculture, improving livelihoods, bringing clean water to the developing world, conservation. And so this is a really important point, that if we are to meet those Sustainable Development Goals by their end date of 2030, we need to really engage and mobilize faith-based communities. In addition to really the moral compass that faith-based organizations have in doing this work, there are some really compelling statistics around the resources that faith-based organizations have. So 8% of habitable land on Earth is owned or controlled by faith-based organizations. They run lots and lots of schools, community development organizations. And so if we can find a way to mobilize those resources towards meeting the SDGs, we can really go a long way. So I want to just give you a little bit of a sense of what's in this report, and there's kind of three major components. We looked at some of the major trends around the work that faith-based organizations are doing, kind of at a higher level. What are we seeing that in the aggregate faith-based organizations are working on? And we looked at that again in the areas of the 6 environmental SDGs, but also their intersection with some of the other SDGs. Then we highlighted a few noteworthy projects that we thought were really illustrative of those trends, things where we were seeing, a lot of creativity, a lot of impact on the ground, things that were really innovative and things that we thought perhaps could be scaled in the future. And then the third kind of major component is a set of recommendations. So looking at those trends and those projects that we highlighted, where can we go further? Where can we make more impact? Where can we scale these projects? How can we think even more creatively about the work that we're doing and form partnerships that are going to help us meet the goals? And so we ended with that set of recommendations. Now, we did a lot of research on projects for this report, and we couldn't include every project as a noteworthy project, but what we also did was create an addendum to the report. So when you receive it, you'll have 2 pieces of the report. There will be the kind of the design version and then an addendum as well with, I think, almost 100 projects that we have found in our research. But, the last thing I really want to say is that there is so much work being done in these different areas of the SDGs that we couldn't possibly capture it all. So we really want this to be a kind of a call to action to all of you and the greater community to help us collect even more data on faith progress for the SDGs. And in the coming months, we're going to be creating a platform to collect that information, and we'll be engaging all of you in that effort. And you will be receiving a copy of the report directly in email after this webinar. So keep a lookout for that. And with that, I hand it back to Lauren.
Thank you so much, Joshua. I know that everyone is excited to receive their report and share it with others. Our next presenter today is Dr. Iyad Abou-Mogli. Iyad is the Director of Faith for Earth and Strategic Engagement with Faith-Based Organizations at the Executive Office of the UN Environment Program. Iyad is joining us today via audio, so let's give him our ears.
Hello, good evening and good morning, everybody. Do you hear me at least?
We do.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I am sorry for the technical hiccup, although I was prepared and bought a new shirt for the occasion, but alas, unfortunately. But anyway, I am very delighted to be you today, launching this important report on the role of faith actors in achieving the SDGs and what are the opportunities in the future. the report Faith Action on the Sustainable Development Goal, Progress and Outlook is a joint effort by our friends at the Parliament of World Religions, United Religions Initiative, and the Bhumi Global. This is an incredible partnership that resulted in this very important report as our first step together in monitoring the contributions of faith actors to the global efforts in implementing our only hopeful agenda to achieve sustainable development by 2030. But also our gratitude is due to faith actors and organizations who have contributed data and excellent stories of engagement to be included in the report. Colleagues and friends, we are amidst dealing with a notorious pandemic that is having tremendous impact on our global efforts. But in such times, we need not to be distracted from focusing on the global agenda. On the contrary, it should be a wake-up call to increase and accelerate and strengthen our joint efforts. We know with a great deal of certainty that the world was not on track to achieve environmental dimension of the 2030 agenda before COVID-19. Environmental crisis coupled with the pandemic are likely to make the achievement of most social and economic goals unattainable if we do not act fast and if we do not act now. The integrated approach requires not only a coherent policy framework or good governance and law enforcement at all levels, but also requires action by all stakeholders, including faith actors. Statistics show that 60% of these indicators, there is not enough data to assess progress. And for 9% of them, there's no progress towards achieving the target. While more than 30% of the environment-related SDGs indicators still do not have an agreed methodology. While our response should promote transformational change for nature and people and investing to build back better by all stakeholders, we emphasize on the role of faith actors as part of the economy to rebuild, scale up, and accelerate sustainable consumption and production, and create new role in all of this. Recognizing that faith-based organizations are the fourth largest economic power on earth and are important actors in sustainable development. They have a role in global advocacy. They have a role in investing in clean energy. They have a role in behavioral change towards sustainable consumption. They have a role in being models in greening our houses of worship. And they have a role in strengthening FBOs in global environmental governance. We hope that this report will provide some baseline and be a trigger not only for faith actors to accelerate efforts, but also as a starting point for better monitoring achievements, as well as constitute an accountability framework for their engagement. Thank you very much for being part of this effort, and I am happy that we are launching it today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iyad Abumogli. At this time, we are going to turn to our panel with Gopal Patel from Bhumi Global as the moderator. This panel is roughly 40 minutes, and when we come back for the conclusion of today's webinar, we'll hear from Kay Kashan some final reflections from a young activist.
To discuss the new report that we are launching, the Faith in Action on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Progress and Outlook. And we have three great speakers. We have Reverend Susan Hendershot, who's the president of Interfaith Power and Light. We have Rabbi Yonatan Neril, who is the founder and the executive director for the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development. And we have Ravneet Singh, who's the EcoSeek project manager for South Asia. Thank you to all three of you for being with us today to share your wisdom and your experiences, and most importantly, all of the work that you've done, not just over the past 5 years since the Sustainable Development Goals have come into force, but even I know many of you have been working for decades in this space. So thank you all for your work and leadership. I want to start just by going around and asking all of you to share a little bit about the specific projects that we've highlighted from your organizations. And Susan, I'm wondering if I could start with you to talk a little bit about your congregations program that you have.
Yes, absolutely. So Interfaith Power and Light was founded in the year 2000 as a religious response to global warming. And one of our very earliest projects was the Cool Congregations program, which is a program that's designed to teach congregations and their members how to reduce their energy use as an act of faith. So we specifically incorporated faith language into the program, but very practically, it's a way to measure your energy use through a carbon calculator that is designed for congregational facilities, and then teaching very practical measures as a way to reduce that energy use within the congregational facilities themselves. And that program has been ongoing and is in force across the country through our 40 state affiliates as well as our national office.
That's really great work. Thanks for sharing, and we'll get into a bit more detail over the course of the session today. Ravneet, I'm hoping you can share about the wonderful work you've been doing with EcoSeek and your campaign to plant 1 million trees, I think it is, not just in India, but globally. Love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, we started in 2009, exactly in these months, but recently, last year, as we were celebrating 550th birth anniversary of the first Guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, we decided that this should be celebrated worldwide by planting 550 trees at every place, wherever people can, and to bring sort of people and communities together in a new way, an innovative way of celebrating Guru Nanak's thoughts and wisdom of protecting the Mother Earth by planting trees. So this is how it started, and now it's been celebrated in more than 10 countries. But in India, it's getting more special because we recently picked up another project under the same Guru Nanak 550 project called Guru Nanak Sacred Forest, and we have been planting microforests with the Japanese methodology called Miyawaki methodology, like 550 trees in a 200 square yards of plot. And so far, we have planted 169 such microforests in India and one in Pakistan as well. So it's gearing up really like a revolution, and people are loving this method of creating microforests. And especially the name Sacred Forest is of more resonance with the community now.
Oh, that's great. That's really amazing, and looking forward to hearing a bit more about that. And Jonathan, could you share a little bit about the work that your centre's been doing, interestingly, with Mozambique and other projects there? Although I think you may have to unmute yourself.
Working to promote commercial-scale solar fields on treasured lands in Africa, and we've been working with the bishop in the Diocese of Niassa province in Mozambique to develop a commercial-scale solar field on the lands of his diocese. It's one of the poorest countries in the world, where most of the people don't have access to electricity, let alone renewable energy-based electricity.
That's great. Thank you so much. So looking forward to diving in deeper. And Ravneet, I'd love to hear a bit more about, I want to get a sense of the motivation behind all of your respective projects. And Ravneet, could you speak a little bit about the fact that, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's 550th, anniversary, and why EcoSeek chose, that anniversary, and why they chose, or why you chose tree planting as the way to honor that? If you could speak a little bit about that and the motivation behind it, but also what success you've been having not just in India but globally as well, how people resonate.
Yeah, sure. As Guru Nanak Dev Ji said, like air is our father and water is air is our. Oh man, this is Punjabi word. Pavan Guru Pani Pita Mata Dharma, so it just gets confused. So for the mother earth and for the sake of water and air, Guru Nanak has asked us to protect all these elements for the future generations as well. So the 550th anniversary was really special because the community somehow over the past decades has lost their connection with the nature because of so many different things like 1947 partition and then 1984. All these things have like communities spread out and settled in many different countries. So this was a chance, like what EcoSIC has been doing in the last 9 years about bringing people on the same platform about protecting ecology because of the teachings and the Sikh history that we have in place. So this was a special auspicious day that 550 and the model with 550 into 1820 different forests and 1820 different spots will just bring up with 1 million trees. So this is how it came about, and creating microforests and just traditional plantation in many countries, it just took off because of the celebration, because our integral part, especially in the Indian religions and cultures, is celebration. People just love to celebrate, the legacies of the gurus and what their teachings and the Sikh history, how we have to, carry on the legacy work. So this is how I think this was the best part, how people got connected about the Sacred Forest Project, 1 million trees, and Canada, USA, UK, and even in countries like Malaysia and Singapore, many Sikh gurdwaras, the Sikh temples, celebrated this birth anniversary by planting 550 trees. We even heard news about the Sikh community in Mongolia participating in the same way with the local ambassadors by planting 550 trees. So there is a lot of enthusiasm, and as I earlier shared, that 169 sacred forests have been planted in India, and we have covered about 6 different states, like not just Punjab, but Rajasthan, the desert area, Jammu and Kashmir, the hilly areas, Gujarat, the areas near to the sea. So all different type of climate zones, different type of soils. We have worked in every kind of soil and planted 553 Guru Nanak sacred forests. So this is how it's been going on, and perhaps the results, when we see the results, like because of this methodology, we have to plant the trees of different layers, the shrub zones and subtrees of different heights together. And due to their symbiotic relationship below the earth, the root zones, they grow so well that we have experienced 10 times faster growth and about 30 times more density of the green cover, the leaf area, which also gave us 30 times more oxygen and sequestered 30 times more carbon, which is just an excellent way to celebrate, like giving out oxygen as free food, the tradition of langar, if you may know, the Sikh Gurdwaras have. So oxygen langar is another traditional word coming up in the communities. And more on that, because Punjab has also faced a lot of loss of biodiversity in the past 4 to 5 decades due to green revolution and industrialization. We have lost the native sparrows, bees, bumblebees, and fireflies, many such sort of things. So people now are witnessing that these sacred forests are bringing more of the biodiversity things back to the forest. Now, as I go to 14 months old sacred forest, we witness all these things like the sparrows, butterflies, and all different kind of bees. So this is all kind of a great connect. I have also heard stories, but I don't think I should be going on and on. We can come back to later. What was the history of these things?
Sure. Yeah, no, I don't want to bring in Susan there, because what I like about Ravneet's program is it looks like it's really bringing in the community aspect. It's not the religious leaders doing it, but it's actually going out into the communities. I think he said 18,000 across the world, and getting them involved and making them the leaders. And my understanding is the congregations program, it's in the title, it's congregations. It's not just the actual places of worship, but it's actually the congregations and their homes as well, also looking to see how they can change their energy supply. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you took that approach rather than just focusing on the places of worship or the congregation, actually making them work together hand in hand. Speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, well, and I just want to say that project that Ravneet shared is so inspirational. I'm just learning so much listening to that and thinking about the biodiversity issue and the Cool Congregations program. We've been very intentional about looking at how faith communities, places of worship, can serve as models within their community. So the idea that a congregation measures their energy use and makes a commitment to lower their energy use, they start implementing measures, right? So they could be energy efficiency measures, lighting, for example, in congregational facilities is a huge energy user. So they can implement these energy efficiency measures, but sort of more deeply, I think it's about creating a culture within the congregation itself of wanting to care for the earth, of wanting to care for creation, whatever the faith language is that they use. And it's when you start creating that culture, you also see the fruits of that by what people start doing in their homes. So the members of that congregation start implementing measures within their homes. They start maybe recycling more or composting more, but it just becomes a part of their everyday thinking, which is, to me, when I think about acting on climate, we're talking about energy transitions, but we're actually really talking about sort of cultural and spiritual transformation, which goes much deeper into the heart of the program. So when they model this in their building, they model it to their members, they model it within the community in which their facility is located. Faith leaders share that with other faith leaders in the community that they are in contact with. And you have this ripple effect where it really builds out throughout the community and much more broadly. And so one of the things that we have implemented at Interfaith Power and Light is what we call the Full Congregations Challenge. We do this every year. In fact, we'll be starting to make announcements pretty soon about the challenge. And what we do is invite congregations to submit their stories to us about what they've done in 5 different areas. So it could be buildings and grounds, it could be renewable energy, it could be community inspiration. So it is about how they're working in their community with others. And what happens is, first of all, we get a number of really amazing stories that we can share. We do pick winners in the categories, but what it's really about is sharing success stories out so that others can be inspired by the work that's going on, and we can get more and more faith communities involved.
Yeah, I love that about the stakeholder engagement, making sure that people are invested and feel like they have a responsibility and a stake in the success of the project. And Jonathan, I'm wondering if you could speak to that, because obviously your center is based in Israel and you're doing work in Mozambique, and I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about how you brokered those relationships to have that grassroots stakeholder engagement in a country, and possibly with people from a different culture and a different religious background to your own or to your center's work as well.
Sure. So I definitely relate to that. I'd actually like to just share with you a few slides that relate to the solar project in Mozambique. And it's see here on the screen is a solar field. This is a solar field in Rwanda that was by renewable energy platform Gigawatt Global. And this shows they worked, and they invited the Archbishop of Rwanda to attend the signing ceremony, the Catholic Archbishop, and also the Anglican Archbishop. They built a similar project in Burundi, and we collaborated with them. These are some of the we're collaborating with them on Mozambique project there. We're showing you these slides so you get a sense of what a commercial scaled solar field in Africa looks like. This is the one in Rwanda, the whole country of Rwanda. And it's a 7.5 megawatt project, and this was the signing ceremony with that included religious figures. So part of the rationale for why we did this is a religious rationale. It says in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 14, and God said, "Let there be luminaries in the expanse of the heavens to separate between the day and between the night." So already in the first chapter of Genesis, God is creating the sun on the fourth day and the moon. Verses continue there that it's to shed light on the earth. So this is a little painting of the sun. How can the sun, which is so enormous, not power this, but just pointing to a little dot right here of the earth? Because there's abundant energy that's reaching earth every day. And why should we need to use fossil fuels when we have fresh energy every day? Why do we need stale, dead energy that's from hundreds of millions of years ago? So the Mama Natură Rebbe was one of the great Jewish leaders of the past generation, said in 1981, quote, "Very soon the entire country of the United States should switch, first of all, to energy that can be generated from the sun's rays in the south, meaning the southern United States, and the southwest. Should be supplied to the entire country. The entire country will benefit. It is plainly ungrateful to God who endowed this country with abundant resources." So there's a religious aspect to using renewable energy, that God is providing this energy to us on a daily basis. And by using fossil fuels and all the problems that fossil fuels cause, we are neglecting that free abundant energy that God is getting on us. So our project manager, Philip Friedland, who's here, met with Anglican bishops. We collaborated with Korean Anglicans of Southern Africa, Reverend Rachel Nash. She put us in contact with a number of Anglican bishops. We're interested in bringing a solar field onto their land for free. And Philip has also met the governor of Nyasa province, because my organization signed an MOU together with Gigawatt Global and the governor of the province to develop this solar project. It's actually been fairly slow going. We've been working on this for about 3 years, and it's still in progress. The field has yet to be built. But the active involvement of Bishop Vicente in Nyasa province has really helps, because it's not just about securing the land on the Anglican diocese, but also getting government to build the project. It's all the other projects that the government is working on.
That's really fantastic work, and it's great to see the visuals of that. And I'm wondering, Jonathan, if we could pivot to, where is this work going? Are you looking to expand the work? How are you trying to develop a model where other stakeholders can get involved in other organizations? We'd love to see, because part of the report that we've authored is looking at the last 5 years of what faith groups have done with this, in supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. And as we go into the final 10-year stretch of the SDGs, looking to 2030 to see how we can really scale up and expand all the great work that faith-based organizations are doing. So I'm wondering, Jonathan, what you're seeing, in the coming years and over the next decade with your work specifically, whether in regards to this specific project, solar in Africa.
I mean, the sky's the limit. There's so much land in religious institutions, both Christian and Muslim in Africa, but around the world, actually. The Brahma Kumaris is a great example in India of a religious-based institution that has fully embraced solar energy. So it's really just about will, and to what extent do religious figures have the will to do this, and to what extent do others, investors, funders, also have the will. There's the World Bank and the Dutch and the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund helped provide debt equity financing for the projects in Rwanda and Burundi that Gigawatt Global implemented. And Rwanda and Burundi are two of the poorest countries in the world. So there's a potential. It doesn't really cost the religious institutions money to do this. So we're trying to match the abundant land together with the financing that exists and the technology which exists to provide solar energy, especially to people who are currently either don't have electricity or have intermittent electricity, and many of them are burning wood, and that's causing indoor air pollution, which is a very, very problematic fuel source.
Right, so it's really from what you're saying, it's like it's not a technical issue, it's not a finance issue, it's a moral issue, right? It's like, is there the moral will, the spiritual will to actually expand this? And I think we all know that the science is out there, the technology is there, the financing is there, it just needs to be diverted in the right direction. Ravneet, I'm wondering if I could pose the same question to you, which is that you've done this great work over the last couple of years. Where are you seeing the tree planting going, over the coming years? Or are you looking to expand into other areas of work? How are you looking to build on the lessons you've learned to really, increase the engagement of Sikh communities globally?
The top lesson that we have learned is like the major focus has to be on the survival of what we plant. And that is happening through the connect of the word sacred. Because in earlier times as well, there was a culture of what we used to call it chiriyan, like the sacred groups in Punjab, and Punjabi community was really very connected to those kind of, chiriyan, the sacred groups, and nobody was allowed to cut or, even trim or take away any resource from the forest. And reviving that thing back has given us a lot of edge about, thinking that this could be revived. And if I talk about the money investment that people have already done, it's about $200,000 just for the plantation. I'm not talking about the land. It has been already invested by the community just for planting 91,000, roughly we would say 92,000 plants so far. So when you see this kind of enthusiasm in the community, we should definitely expand, because now we see it can be done, so we should do it. And perhaps with this methodology which I talk about, people are now embracing it. It was Japanese before, now it's in Indian as well now, because they embrace it really well. And now we're looking forward, because EcoSig has been registered finally in the UK, and it is already registered in America. So we are hoping to work with the Woodland Trust and with the American Forest Foundation as well very soon, and even the OneTree.org. If you have heard about that 1 trillion tree plantation, EcoSig is part of the stakeholders committee in America now, and we are really looking forward to expand our project by this Miyawaki methodology and bringing more sacred forests in the world, because the word sacred brings a connect with the communities, and people see that relation of coexistence, like we can't survive without nature, just staying away or being superior from the nature. So that kind of respect has to evolve through all these projects and investments and whatever we do. If we have a respect, a kind of moral value that was being discussed just a minute ago, that is necessary to do. So that kind of fulcrum about the sacredness of the forest and the nature we have around and we live with, that has to be revived in the traditions, in the cultures, in the religions, and everywhere.
That's good, and I love that. You started this work in Punjab, then you adopted this technology or this methodology from Japan, brought that to India, and now you're taking that and using that with your partners in the UK and the United States as well. That's a real. I just love that story of like this globalization of environmental efforts. That's really at a very grassroots level.
And somewhere in the discussion, I would really like to show one picture how like 14 months or just 1 year forest look like, about density and height. I just have one slide there.
Well, if we have the facility, maybe you can share it now. before we
sure.
finish is the final slide. Yeah. To see that.
Yeah, you see something here.
Yeah.
Is it 4 pictures right away?
We see a single picture. We see your colleague pointing up in the.
Okay, that's let me show this. Yeah, this is the one I wanted to share.
Okay.
So this is 10 months old forest, the top left, and then 14 months old, and then the bottom left is 12 months, 1 year old, and this is another one, 8 months old. This is how dense they look. And you can see the 2 guys are sitting here, they're hiding it. So this is only 550 trees, but they're planted in a very tiny piece of land, just 200 square yards. So when we see people generally talk about the cost of plantation, land is the biggest asset. Now we have conquered that part because less land is required for this kind of plantation with the Japanese methodology. And already we have covered 7 acres of land so far for the 92,000 plants we have done. But otherwise, traditionally, if we go for planting out 92,000 plants or trees, it would need 120 acres of land. See the difference, 7 acres and 120 acres. So that is the cost reduction of the project. And if you talk about the carbon sequestering, this is 30 times more, and 30 times more oxygen production and 100 times more biodiverse. What more can we just expect from the clock? So this is how it has to go. I think this is the way to go, and the community has really embraced it. And people are calling us, like we have about 40 more projects in line, fully funded, but there are obstacles that we will discuss later in the discussion.
That's great, Ravni. And Susan, I'm wondering if I can take that same conversation question to you, which is, you've had success with this Cool Congregations program now for a number of years, and I'm going to challenge you a little bit in saying that, where do you see the program going, specifically in the context of younger people and the changing nature of religious identity and religious affiliation in the United States, where we see church attendance and places of worship are struggling to maintain membership? How do you see your program going forward in the changing dynamics that we're seeing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and certainly one that we have been grappling with as well within the organization. And I want to say, one of the things that we've been committed to is something that we've called the Paris Pledge. So what we've asked both individuals and congregations to do is to pledge to reduce their energy use by 50% by 2030 and to become carbon neutral by 2050. And part of the reason for that is just this knowledge that if we're to meet the goals that were set within the Paris Climate Agreement, it has to go beyond state actors. It can't just be countries making their individual commitments, which is certainly important. It has to drive policy in all of our countries. But the reality is that we were never going to get there just with the commitments that were made by countries. It was going to take civil society actors in order to get us there. And so that includes city governments, for example, or businesses. And certainly, we've had a lot of conversation about how much property congregations own, and congregations have to be a part of the solution. And you're right, the demographics on that are shifting. It is for younger people in the United States especially, they have less of an identity around a specific congregation, while at the same time, many of them retain a spiritual identity, so what we call the spiritual but not religious in the U.S. And so we've been really working to build a bigger tent to allow for various ways for individuals and those, individuals not associated with a congregation and those who are, to participate. So one of the things we've done with our full congregations program, for example, is we not only have a carbon calculator for congregations, but we also have one for individual households. So you can go in as a homeowner or a renter, and you can still plug in your energy use information and make a plan to reduce your emissions. So we are trying to really broaden the scope of the program in a way that allows for a variety of individuals to participate. And I would say that goes across the work that we do as an organization. We also work very hard on policy advocacy as an organization, and oftentimes for those who consider themselves the spiritual but not religious, they may be more interested in taking an action, an advocacy action to support policy change than they are specifically about, measuring their carbon use in their home. We hope that it's actually a both and, right? Because we think that at the end of the day, it takes both individual action and policy change to get us where we need to be to address this existential crisis that's happening all over our globe.
Great. I knew I could ask you that question. I knew that you'd give a good answer. That's really great. It's about, I love that it's not just about continuing just because something has been successful is to continue, but always to be aware of the changing context which you're operating in and to see how we can adjust to that change so that we can bring in more people. And the big tent approach is certainly what we need, not just for environment, climate change, biodiversity issues, which we're talking about today, but also with all the other sustainable development goals that we're committed to. We just have a few minutes left. The conversation has flown by, and I'm sorry that we're almost out of time. Just want to go around one more time, and Ravneet, I'll start with you. Wondering if you could just share any words of encouragement or inspiration to those of us who are looking to increase this work or not sure where to start. Just wondering if you could pick out some pearls of wisdom as some final words from you.
The pearls of wisdom is always the toughest part. I would just say because whenever you found that something could be done, then you must do it. And now, as far as we have seen such a great boost from the community side as well, kind of funding and investment, and people are willing to invest their lands in the gurdwaras, in the schools, in the institutions as well, and in the Gram Panchayat, the villages as well. So why not do it? And why can't governments just not see that? And why can't we have policies where a certain portion of land in every village, in every institution could be designated for such tiny forests, and perhaps even for the solar panels? It should be part of policy work. I think it should be done like that, where every individual, every group, every community shares their own responsibility to create a better world and participate in doing that.
Great, I love that. Everyone has a responsibility. Thank you so much. Jonathan, same question to you. What's next? How do we maintain this energy and increase it going forward?
First of all, as I'm hearing Ravneet share, it strikes me how there's a real synergy between our work and also with Reverend Hendershot in terms of, planting trees is important and in our times people are cutting down trees for energy use, for cooking and other uses. So renewable energy can help to address that. Look, the moment that we're in is really an evolutionary moment in human history. As one of my teachers said, sisters have been dreaming about this for thousands of years. 10 million trees just burned in the past on the west coast of the United States. From Mississippi, the Florida Panhandle just flooded. And, I could go on for the next hour describing what's happening, which I think people are becoming increasingly aware of. At the same time, this week is a pregnant week because it offers an opportunity to really say, okay, we have a problem and we need to focus our energies on addressing that. And the biggest NGO in the world are religious institutions, like Reverend Susan was saying, that it's not just about governments, it's about, well, what is the commitment of every parish and house of worship on planet Earth? What is the commitment of every clergy member to have all hands on deck and to devote all of our resources to addressing our most pressing crisis? Everything else pales in comparison. And if we don't draw on the millennia-old resources within our religious traditions and the tremendous resources that exist in land and media and educational systems to address our ecological crisis, which is really a spiritual crisis, then may God help us. God has given us all these resources precisely in order to bring them to bear on the crisis that we're facing today. That's my hope, and that's my blessing.
Thank you so much. Susan, I'm wondering, same question to you, just some final thoughts.
Boy, both of those things were so beautifully said, and the thing that strikes me in this moment that we're in, and I am living in a state where trees are burning right now in California, and I'm torn between, I hear people talk about being an optimist or a pessimist, sort of where are you on that? And I would say for me, I'm neither. That optimism is sort of this idea that everything will work out no matter what I do. And pessimism is that nothing will work out no matter what I do. So, sort of either one allows you to step away from the problem. But I think the difference for me is being grounded in an active hope that says that what I do actually matters. That what I do can actually make a difference in this moment, and whether that's, the ripple of me and everyone I know changing our light bulbs, which seems like it's sort of out of proportion to the scale of the problem, but yet when you multiply that, it has a big impact. But also the fact that I use my voice and that I find my place of power and that I act from that place of power, no matter what my way into this is, if it's tree planting, if it's putting up solar, if it's energy efficiency, but it is about using our collective voices to create a more hopeful future, both for those who are currently on this earth and those who are coming after us.
Great, thank you, Susan, for that. And thank you to all the panelists around me, Jonathan and Susan, thank you so much. I want to bring in Joshua Bassifin now from Parliament World Religions, one of the co-authors of the report. Josh, that's been a great, rich discussion we've just had there, and there's so much more in the report that we're launching. So I'm wondering a couple of closing words of reflections from you as we close out.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you all so much, Gopal, for your excellent moderation, and to all the panelists. I'm just really, my head is spinning with all of that great information. I want to connect this up with our report and the SDGs themselves. So we saw some trends as we were drafting our report, and I just want to identify some of those trends. So one of the trends that we saw was ecosystem restoration that a number of faith-based organizations are doing, and EcoSeek in planting trees is really fulfilling that goal, the life on land goal, to restore ecosystems and make sure that we have ecological integrity. And I think, Ravi, one of the things you said that was really interesting is how can we use land more efficiently? We know that faith-based organizations own or control something like 8% of the habitable land on Earth, and if we can just seize the opportunity to use that land in an ecologically balanced way to plant trees, to plant native species, to protect biodiversity, we could go so far. So that's one of the recommendations that we had. Another trend that we saw was developing renewable energy in the developing world, particularly in Africa, either through investments or through technically coordinating those projects. And so, of course, Rabbi Neril's project is really working towards the SDGs involved in climate action, access to energy. 600,000 people in sub-Saharan Africa lack access to energy. They're often burning wood, kerosene, diesel, really dirty fuels, as the rabbi said. Excuse me. And so there are so many benefits that come from these projects. Reductions in localized air pollution, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, improved livelihoods from having that energy. And solar panel, the cost of solar panels really come down. I think there's great opportunities to seize that. For IPL's project, we actually included that in a section of the report that we call intersectional, because we're seeing this trend of SDG 4, which has to do with education intersecting with the environmental SDGs, because we know that sustainability education is so important for our future. And so the Cool Congregations program is such a great example of using education to create a sustainability culture and train people in creating their congregations and doing other sustainability initiatives. So just wanted to tie all those things together, and thank you guys again so much for being here.
Thank you, Josh, for those concluding remarks, and thank you all for your time and your work, and looking forward to the next 5 years and the next 10 years, and maybe we can do this again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bumi Global and panelists. We want to invite for some final reflections today, Kehkashan Basu. Kehkashan is a UN human rights champion. She is the founder and president of the Green Hope Foundation and the former global coordinator for UNEP's major group for children and youth. She has just been named as one of the top 100 SDG leaders in the world and is the youngest recipient of Canada's top 25 Women of Influence. Kehkashan, please share your reflections today.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Great. If I can share my screen, Joshua. Once again, thank you so much. So, climate myopia. This is the disease that afflicts most of humanity, most certainly our policy pundits and decision makers, as well as the media. Because why else would they ignore the forest fires, floods, landslides that continue to cause devastation, even as we speak, in the third world across Asia and Africa? And the question is, are these of any lesser concern than the California fires? Even the fires in the Amazon no longer make headlines, even though they continue to spew millions of tons of CO2 while destroying thousands of acres of rainforest. And it is this selectiveness, this blatant lack of empathy, that's the greatest stumbling block on the road to the future we want. And I cannot help but look back to that day 5 years ago when, as a 15-year-old, I was one of the 193 young people, each representing a UN member state, to witness the historic adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals at the United Nations, bringing to fruition the years of hard work, negotiations, discussions, and engagement. And that, for me, began at Rio Plus 20, post which I founded my organization, Green Hope Foundation, in 2012, with the aspiration of providing the much-needed inclusivity to children, youth, and especially girls in the sustainability dialogue. And this has been the mantra of Green Hope and its 2,060 youth members working in our 16-country chapters. And our mission is to localize the SDGs, addressing the two main issues that hamper youth engagement: a lack of awareness, and a consequent lack of inclusivity. And even as a 12-year-old, it was very clear to me that the impacts of climate change, of overconsumption, and of wastage were felt most by people, nations, and communities, those who were least responsible for it. And for us, mitigation is not about striking or raising slogans on the streets. Our action is to take the SDGs to these marginalized communities using education for sustainable development as a transformative tool to provide them with the knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, and behaviors to think and act for a sustainable future. So we developed a unique advocacy tool called the Sustainability Academy that uses peer-to-peer communication, wherein we train children and youth about implementing the SDGs. And majority of the children whom we work with don't go to school, and since our work is global, there are the additional dimensions of language and social strictures, particularly for girls and women. So to circumvent these issues, we use innovative, non-formal communication modes in our advocacy, such as art, dance, music, sport, drama, writing, and fashion to spread awareness. And armed with this knowledge, the Academy participants venture out within their local communities, taking definitive steps towards conservation, thereby localizing the SDGs and connecting different SDG targets with one another. And Green Hope works with them on the implementation of these campaigns that have educated over 97,000 youth in 25 countries. And that includes Syrian refugees, Rohingya refugees, children of prisoners in Nepal and Kenya, the homeless and poverty-stricken communities in India, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. Additionally, sustainability education is almost unheard of in most school curriculums, even in the developed countries, and Green Hope partners with school boards here in Canada, in the Middle East, and in other regions to engage students. And our actions have resulted in over 110,000 tree plantings, regeneration of several hundred square kilometers of mangrove ecosystems in Suriname, Indonesia, the Middle East, and in the Sundarbans, the world's largest mangrove forest, by planting more than 5,000 mangroves across the world, turtle conservation, over 165 beach and community cleanups, and recycling over 200,000 kilos of waste. And we've even distributed more than 3,000 solar lamps to marginalized communities. Now, during the ongoing pandemic, our advocacy really went digital, and we continue our academies virtually while working amongst the most severely impacted communities in Bangladesh, providing them with masks, sanitation materials, as well as skills-based education to enable the creation of local circular economies, especially for those who have lost their sources of income. And we all know that the pandemic has substantially eroded progress made on the SDGs. So multilateralism must be the new mantra as we come out of the pandemic pause. And since 80% of the world's population are believers, faith-based organizations have a critical role to play in creating a new world order. And now more than ever before, we need empathy and compassion to be the main accelerators, and faith-based organizations can be the key drivers in this regard. Now, the pandemic, despite its destruction, it has given us this new opportunity to reset the clock. And the UN Economist report issued last week has also echoed a very similar warning of 5 human-made megatrends that will continue to dominate and frustrate global efforts to put the world on a more sustainable and prosperous path, unless urgent policy interventions to influence them are taken now. And these megatrends are climate change and nature degradation, inequalities, urbanization, rapid population changes, and technological revolution. The future that the children in these images will grow up in, that depends on how responsible and accountable we hold ourselves. So if not for ourselves, we owe it to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kehkashan. Thank you for bringing in the multi-generational aspect. We've also heard today the importance of whether you are a faith-based actor or a spiritual but not religious actor, our actions all matter. We are at a critical moment on planet Earth, and this is such a helpful report for all of us to read in understanding where we are on the map and what actions we want to take individually and in our communities. So we hope that you will read the report, share it with others. Thank you so much for giving us your time today on this International Day of Peace. Joshua, do you have anything else you want to add before we close out?
I don't think so. Just thank you, Lauren, for your excellent facilitation of the webinar, and it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you all. May peace prevail on earth.